Shabbat Shalom, Senbet Salam, Sabbatical peace. Greetings. Ine Aras Yadinos Tefari. Name. I am Ras Iadonis Tefari, also known as Wendim or Brother Yadon of the line of Jewish Society of His Imperial Majesty. Greetings. We are now touching on the 32nd, the Salasa Hulet, the 32nd Senabatat or Senbetat, Sabbatical kufl or portion, the Sabbath portion, the parasha, the Ibrayist in the Hebrew, the parasha. We say Bamarinya, the kufl, the portion 32, and that's found on page 6. We haven't as of yet posted of this recording right now. We haven't as of yet posted the 31st, the Amar or Bele Nigaracho. Now, today's date, this is Saturday, May 7th, and as many of you already know, there's much that's going on, both we can say globally in the community among I. There's a lot going on in the so-called world of seclorum, and even among I as far as the preaching and the proclamation and the teachings of the King of Kings and His Christ. And it's very important that we grasp this. It's very important for the I them to really grasp this in spirit and in truth, because our proficiency and knowledgeability and application of these teachings will bear on our future progress, both individually as well as collectively, so that we can come together and be self-sustaining and be progressive, you understand, and be a peaceful and progressive people, you understand. It's very important for us to recognize the role and the importance that education, that the teachings of His Imperial Majesty play in it, as well as the sabbatical, the Sabbath studies, the core of the scriptures, the core of the Bible. We will say are those 5 books of Moses, or what we know as the Torah, or some call the Tanakh, but not apart from the rest of the scriptures, and that's including the Hadith or the Hadith, Kidan, the Berit Hadasha. But it's important for us to gain a good gnosis or knowledge of the overall, of the overview. And this is one reason why the weekly sabbatical studies, and not just for the Sabbath day, when we are able to congregate and come together on the Sabbath day, or if we do come together on the Sabbath day, if we're more in a community and it's a short and easy travel distance, and we have a place that is designated by His name, by the true name, and that means the true knowledge of the name. That's where He sets it among those who in spirit and in truth and in head and the heart, you understand, as in the teaching as well as the application, overstand that word and overstand that name, where His name is set. Now, the reason just going over this briefly is just to make note. We were a little bit how can you say, a little bit disappointed with ourselves for not already having up the sabbatical portion, the 31st. So we're making a particular note here, and please also make a note that what we're going to seek to do, Yah willing, is to post up the 32nd, hopefully before this Sabbath goes out, at least for the first day, which is the Ehud, which is also known as the Sunday. And the Sunday and the Saturday in the true teaching, the true Hebraic teachings go together. In the sense, go together in the sense of the early Christians did come together on the Ehud or the Sunday, because that's after they took the 7th day as that rest day. Then they would gather, you understand, after that sabbatical day, after that Shabbat day, they would gather together on the first day of the week You understand, to discuss that which was important in the community. You understand that which was important to the family, the community of Hebrews or respective Israelites. So there's a misunderstanding of the Sabbath and the Sunday, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity. It's very important that we address that. You understand? Very important we address that. What we're trying to just go over is some of the basic elements concerning the order. It's important that we understand and we comprehend that in studying these Sabbatical studies, we're in the Ethiopic Leviticus now, or abbreviated for short, the EL. We're in the L lessons, or the Ethiopic Leviticus. And it's important to understand the link and correspondence and connection of Leviticus to our liberty. And for this Sabbatical portion, this nibab, what we call the reading, the nibab, which is the reading, and from studying and meditation of it, this is where we get a feeding. This is where we get nourished, you understand, in our heads and in our hearts. And this is also what lays a true foundation, a masarat, for us to come together. You understand, to come together and to overcome all of those so-called Negroism or niggerisms. When I say Negroisms, for us as the once lost but now found Beta Israel, or so-called black people who have recovered their identity and recovered their spiritual sensibility, their senses spiritually, their spiritual sense, that we recognize who we are. We're able to overcome a lot of those obstacles that prevent us from gathering together and working together in a holy and a holistic way. So this is the reason why even we ourselves, even individually, have to spend the time to study this, because often, if you scan over the scripture, you scan over the studies, you might look at the high points and say, oh yeah, okay, I got this, I know this. But you're not able to apply it. And the majority of questions and reasonings amongst many brothers and sisters who have some sort of maybe a challenge or a problem or some area they would like to get our counsel or advice on concerning Rastafari, concerning our Ethiopian Hebrew, our Hebraic Al-Qidan and Covenant. I often notice, and this is what is very interesting. This is why I take this time out to make this particular point right here. I noticed that the answers, and this may sound overly simplistic to some, but the answers, most of the answers, the majority of questions we have, the majority of the answers to those questions are contained in scriptures. So when Kedamawi Haile Selassie Abba Kedus Abatachin says to us and gives us the word of wisdom that in his autobiography, and when he's making his prayer, when the Father is praying to the Son now, he says, although there's nothing that's not written, you understand, in Holy Scriptures, although there's nothing that's not written. Now, that might seem like a hyperbole to some, that, oh, well, everything is not written in the Holy Scriptures. You understand, to the arrogant, to the ignorant. However, when you properly digest your food, your spiritual food, you understand, this is what mawahad and what tawahido at the root, when you look at the scientific application of that word tawahido, where it means to become one, but in the sense of digestion, in the sense of like the likeness of tawahido is to mawahad. In fact, that is the actual Ethiopic is root word that scientifically will refer to digestion and assimilation. You understand? When people are sick, either they lack the proper vitamins, they lack the proper nutrition. You understand? They lack, those basics of a quality, a basic quality of life as the Almighty created it, because we're living in a world that's out of His order. You understand? We're in the world, but we're not of the world. So when you notice there's sickness in people, or there's a lack of growth in people, you understand? And this has been scientifically proven. Usually they talk about nutritional deficiencies. You understand, especially with, say, a mother and a child, or a child. You understand, at those early stages, especially the first couple of years are crucial. You understand, to building up the child's basic immunity. You understand, to laying the foundation or the building blocks for their sustainable growth. You understand, for their sustainable growth. Now, we liken that to us as newborn, when we are born again, when we are regenerated. This is why it's important, you understand, for us to have a circumcised heart, to use that metaphor there, a circumcised heart. And that connects with the whole idea of the regeneration and being truly born again. You understand, born again, being born from above, not to be conformed to the world, but to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, by the renewing of our mind. This is very, very important for us. And this is one reason why I take out the time often, even before getting into you could say, the heart of the lesson, to give, to preface the lesson by such, proclamation or preaching. One can say exhortation. Biblically speaking, is like an exhortation, to exhort you, to try to build ones up. You understand, and to encourage as well, to encourage ones to study. You understand, or to take the time out at least to read and to take some notes. You understand, to begin to take notes. And this is how we disciple. You understand, we become discipled and disciplined. You understand? And this is how we will lay the basic foundation for future progress amongst ones and ones, and to be able to identify who is our brother and who is our sister in spirit and in truth. You understand? Because we will have one Father, the instruction of the Father, and one mother, the law of the mother. You understand? We're not to be under the law, but we are in-laws. And this is how we become a family when we speak spiritually, when we're using these metaphors or these particular styles of speech to communicate even a greater, a more metaphysical, a more transcendental reality, but not to just get lost so-called in space. You understand, in so-called metaphysical or new age kind of jargon. You know, this is not to use certain just jargon, but to understand exactly what does this mean and how does it really apply. You understand? And in real time, is there application? In real time, is there a benefit that is for our benefit, as the scripture has been written for our benefit? Now, saying that, my brothers and sisters, let us touch on the 32nd Sabbatical portion, Sabbatical kufl, or Senbetawi kufl. And this begins at Leviticus chapter 25, from 25 to Leviticus chapter 26 and 2. Here's where it's interesting. Now, you may notice from certain weeks to weeks, sometimes it's a longer portion, sometimes it's a shorter portion. And as you probably can see and know, we only have one more Levitical Sabbath where we study Leviticus, or in the EL portion of the teaching. And now this is very important, because this is the initial, you could say, first semester, the first basic semester of discipleship. You understand? Must incorporate Torah studies. You understand? One must get a Torah familiarity, must become familiar with the Torah, must practice the reading and practice studying, and even in congregational or Bible study or fellowship or family study, to get familiar with it, so that even those of us who have the adult sort of responsibility, or maybe parents and have children of our house, you understand, because many houses have been broken apart in this seclorum, in this world system. But those who have the opportunity to teach their children, it is very important to teach their children, but it's important for the parents or the grown folks You understand, to become as children again themselves, and to learn this for themselves in spirit and in truth. So we have one more Sabbath that is dealing with the Torah portion of Leviticus, and that will be the 33rd. The 33rd. You understand? And some can see something Masonic about this, you know, the numbering of it and also what is contained in it. But unless we're looking at this in the context of our Father's house, you understand, and him as being the head cornerstone, which the builders, the so-called secular Masons and secular religious people refuse becoming the head of the corner, we're not going to really go there unless one can see it in that particular context right there. So we're at the 32nd, we can say, degree. This is the 32nd degree, and the first verse, let's go to the first verse of chapter 25 of Orit Ze Lewawiyan, Haya Amis. And the first verse, Besim Ab, Wawelid, Wamenefesik, Edus, Ahadu, Amlak, and Demilo. Egazi Abiherima Musena Besina Teraralai, Indi Below Tanagaro. And Yahweh, the sustainer, Egazi Abiher, Lotu Subhat, Yahweh Baruchu, blessed be he, spake to Moses, to Moshe, to Muse in Mount Sinai or Sina, Sina Terara, saying, speak to the children of Israel, le Israel lejo chindi bile nigracho, ine wode misetachu midera, begabachu gize, mideritua le egazi ave herra senbetadarig. Speak to the children of Israel, the Dekika Israel, the Bane Yisrael, and say to them, when ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath to the sustainer, Yahweh Baruchu le egazi abiher senbet tadariga. It says begabachu gize. In the time that we enter into the midritu, to the land, or to his land, to she who is his, in other words, she being the land who belongs to him, le egazi abiher. It says le egazi abiher senbet tadarig. In other words, do a Sabbath to Egazi Abihir. In other words, do a Sabbath to the sustainer. Now, this is very, very important right here. Now, let's get with the key word first and foremost. Let's get the key word. It's we call it terara. As you can see, Bangladesh in the English, terara. And next is behar. Behar. Now, there's an asterisk next to Behar, and you must be familiar with that. It says that portions marked with the asterisk can be added to the following week's readings. Now, here's one thing here's what ones will call the genius of it that I'm beginning to notice, even going through these 54 sabbatical portions and the readings and the teachings and the feedings. What I'm learning, and this is just to share this with my brothers and sisters, for me even to testify to you all, is that we had just touched on the fact, and to remind that we felt somewhat disappointed that we was not able to touch on the 31st, which was last week's. You understand? Sabbatical portion, because we were touching on the double portion from before. So if you look over the sabbatical related, or the last couple of postings that we have done focusing on the Torah or the Orit, you would notice a few of them were doubled up. There was 27 and 28, and there was 29 and 30, and now we're here at 32nd, you understand, for the sabbatical time. For this, today is the Senbet Zare, you understand, today is the Senbet Zare Wunu. However, we didn't touch on the 31st. Or at least post it. We was not able to post it. Now, and we've just been noticing how these stars and asterisks come in at the right time, because if you look at the asterisk, it says portions marked with the asterisk can be added to the following week's readings. So that means that we could just say, okay, you know what, we'll read this next week. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because we are in a fasika, when the Passover occurs according to that lunar or the heavenly calculation that is calculated by the new moon. So sometimes the new moon may come earlier, as you notice for the 29th, the Haile Zetang, which was Komotu Bechala or Acharemot, which was the 29th Sabbatical Kuful portion. And now we are at 32, and there's a little star, a little asterisk there as well. So what we might have to do within this particular week, we hope to post this one up probably before the 31st, but post the 31st and the 32nd up there at the same time, because this time now coincides. Very interestingly enough, it coincides with the Fasika, or the end of that Passover time, and some of the Moedim or the Be'alat, like Pentecost or the 50 days, the harvest, you understand, the Feast of Weeks, the harvest feast, as well as the wave loaves, and the Day of Atonement, and tabernacles of the Hebrew holy calendar, or the so-called religious calendar, begins at this time. And this is also our New Year's time. So we were speaking about from the point of view of resurrection, connecting the foundation in Muse with the fulfillment in Gitachin Med Hanatachin Jesus Christos, in Yeshua HaMashiach, the fulfillment in Christ even in his kingly character. But this is a New Year's time. This is our holy New Year's time. So a lot happens. So when we're in the community and we're living in his way, in the Al Kidan, in the covenant, in community, around these times a lot will be going on, as far as with the New Year, with the Passover and the New Year and the respective feast, or the Moedim, the Be'alat, like Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, as well as the first fruits, you understand, and then within like a 50-day period after that, you understand, we have the Feast of Weeks, you understand, and then the wave loaves, and the other, with the fall festivals, the fall part of the season. You understand? You have the fall festivals, but before that you have the spring. So the spring festivals come first. So this is around the spring. This is the springtime. So it's interesting now that the reading, the sabbatical reading and feeding that takes place for the 32nd Sabbath, and because that star there next to Behar, it's important for us to understand, well, what does that mean and how is it related and relevant? So even though we might feel a way about not being able to edit everything that needs to be edited and to put it up there at the same time, or in a more timely fashion, we have to recognize that when we are applying this way of life, we will still have been in the Passover time. But because we are in a land that is not our own, we are not able to fulfill all of the will of our God and Father in and through the Mashiach, in and through Christ. We're not able to fulfill all of it as far as to do all of that which he has commanded us to do, you understand, in its real way. For example, let me say, verse 2 here in Orit Zelewawian, Haya Amist, it says, speak to the children of Israel, le Israel Jochendi, Bele Nigracho. It says, when ye come into the land. That's the key right there. Begabachu Gize. You understand? When ye come into the land, wada mitasetachu, in there wada mitsetachu midar begabachu Gize. When ye come into the land which Yahweh, which our God Father, in the authority of Christ in his kingly character, the land which he has given us. Now we can see that Shashemene, or Shashemane, as ones would say, Shashemene Ethiopia, is a type. And it's very interesting for us to connect that the first land grant administrator of the Shashemane land grant of his Imperial Majesty to the once lost but now found Ethiopian Hebrews, the black Jews and the Ethiopian Hebrews, those of us falashas of the West, back in the 1950s, we can say, was a Hebrew. You understand? Was Mr. and Mrs. James Piper. Yaakov, or James Piper, was the first Shashemane land grant administrator who was a Hebrew. Now, there's some stories that are circulating that some settlers have passed on and have shared and so forth and so on concerning when His Imperial Majesty visited Shashemene and he wanted to speak to, see everyone. And at this particular time, I think it was a Sabbath day, and James Piper, Mr. James Piper, the Shashemene land grant administrator, that he did not come out to see His Imperial Majesty. This is what has been said, and one said because he was keeping the Sabbath, or he was keeping the Senbet day. Now some read into that His Majesty was disappointed with him, so forth and so on. We don't see a connection to that. They try to use that to say that his post as Shashemene land grant administrator was somehow jeopardized by that. This is why there became a big confusion, you understand, around who was in charge of the Shashemene land grant, or that colony that His Imperial Majesty had given those of us in the West who sought to repatriate or to make that exodus during that particular dispensation. Now, that right there, at best, is a rumor. You understand? That becomes a pretext for ones and ones to do what they like and to try to cast dispersions, both, you understand, on that particular Shashemene land grant administrator, as well as upon keeping the Sabbath and keeping the fullness of it. You understand? There's nothing that is read into the record, or should be read into the record, concerning that particular incident right there, as though James Piper was wrong for not coming out, or he did not come out. I mean, he might have been in prayer or meditation. Of course, His Imperial Majesty, Kedusa Batachin, would have understood that. You understand? And basically came out to visit his people. You understand? But his people, only one amongst his people was even doing what the will of God in Christ says to do. You understand? At that particular time. So it was not an announced visit, so forth and so on. As His Majesty, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie II, kept the seventh day Sabbath, you understand, as well as the first day gathering. You understand? The gathering with the people, like on the first day where ones go to church. Some say, well, that is his Sabbath. There's nothing in Scripture that should be read into that. That is strictly what the Catholics have done to do away with the seventh day. But original Ethiopian Christianity, Ethiopic Christianity, you can study this, you can find this out. It's in many different records that the Christian kings of Ethiopia kept the Sabbath, you understand, as well as gathered with the people and with the clergy on the first day of the week. That was the particular Serat, that was the particular order. You understand? That was the order of how the community at that time. It was the Catholic infiltration that sowed the seeds of dissension between brother and brother, and interpretation roughly around the time of the 16th and 17th centuries, that caused a lot of religious warfare. So over time, much of the true steadfastness to our Judeo-Christian roots had been watered down or forgotten. You understand, by ones and ones. So we come to this day and time now where the majority of Ethiopian Orthodox Christians don't keep the seventh-day Sabbath and have avoided, have cut off, in a sense, their Old Testament, you understand, foundation. They've cut off the Al Kidan, the real roots of the Al Kidan, and that can also figure and does figure into the political and the social disintegration that we notice here and there in Ethiopia. But for us, as the once lost but now found Beit Israel, as the falashas of the West, and the elect Rastafari, that doesn't have anything to do, you understand, with us. What has to do with us, you understand, is us understanding what is the will of His Majesty in Christ for us and what is His order. You see, He says to us right here in Orit Ze Lewawiyan, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, and then say to anyone other than the children of Israel, to say those who are faithfully keeping the fullness of that Al Kidan, that Benai Barit, the covenant. You know what I'm saying? Not speak to those, you know what I'm saying, who have forgotten that they are of the children of Israel, and who have forgotten and turned their backs on His covenant. You know what I'm saying? For a false covenant, or a misinterpretation, as many of the careless Ethiopians in this present generation have done. But not all, but many have. But this word here is speaking to us, saying to speak to them and say that when we are coming to the land which the King of Kings and Christ has given us, and that is Ethiopia, symbolized by Shashemene land. It says when we come into that land which He gives us, He says, then shall the land keep a Sabbath to the Lord. In other words, this is so important when we start to talk about sustainable agriculture, when we start to talk about sustainability and the holistic community, you know, and the way of living in the land, which is ecological. And when we talk about Aranguade Cristina, or green Christianity, that takes the stewardship of the earth very seriously, which is really the root of the true Rastafari. You understand, the vision of Rastafari from the very beginning was that I and I farm and till the land. You understand, and sought to come out of Babylon into our own land. You understand, but over time, the seclurum or the worldliness has crept in. So there's a lot of confusion among many ones and ones as to, well, what is the rightful orientation of Rastafari. Many have become disorientated. So there's a disconnect if you study Rastafari from what the early Rastafari were about, whether they were the Rastafari in Jamaica, or whether they were the Rastafari in New Orleans, Louisiana, or the Rastafari in Harlem, New York, you understand, or the Rastafari in America, or in among the Afro-Hispanic or Spanish-speaking peoples, you understand, who are part of our peoples, the Afro-American so-called, the Afro-Caribbean, the Afro-Hispanic people. You understand? And we've traced this, and it's very beautiful to see, well, who is part of the diaspora of our family. So this is why this word must get out there. We must become familiar with it and study it. Now, there's a book that we would like to recommend at this particular portion right here, concerning Leviticus chapter 25, because this chapter 25 is the basic study. This chapter of 55 verses plus the first 2 verses of chapter 26 is the sabbatical reading, and is also the feeding, which means for the next we could say 6 or so days after the Sabbath. In other words, this will be when we will come together on the first day, the Ihud, the Sunday, when we keep the Senbet, you understand, and read and feed upon the word. Then we come after that rest day, we gather together to hear the word, you understand, from the priest, or hear the word from those who are charged with the responsibility, like the family head. You understand, the family head, or we gather now on this particular word. You understand, this is what we would gossip on. This is what we would talk about. Did you read the The sabbatical portion, you got a chance to read it, didn't you? Yeah, you see what this says right here, such and such. Well, what I was thinking about was that because it says, you know what I mean, this is how we build, you understand, amongst ourselves. So we've already developed a lot of bad habits here in the diaspora and Babylon. Now we have to come into the good habit. But there's a book that we like to recommend. We recommended it before. Vegetarianism and Judaism. You understand? I think by that that book, that particular book right there by Richard Schwartz. Richard Schwartz. It's a very, very good book, and often we're usually disappointed with the books that have been put out. The majority of the information and books out there is disinformation, but occasionally, you know, you can pick sense out of nonsense, but occasionally you find a book that really is really rooted and grounded and really can be used as a tool, as a study tool, as a manual. And these books, you understand, have special importance because you'll make regular references, like having a good dictionary. You understand, one will make regular references to it. You understand, and you might throw out certain type of books because or newspapers, all the kind of stuff that really doesn't have any value or only had a value for its particular time or it's out of date or something like that. It's these kind of books that do not get out of date, but they have eternal truths. And I point out Judaism and Vegetarianism. I point out this particular book by Richard Schwartz because it helps to take this biblical and Torah word and shows a real life applicability, especially with the issue of the ecological issues, the environmental issue, the sustainable environments. You understand, issue that is so very important since we're in an age right now where there is this idea of saving the earth and let's save the earth and save the land. This is what this particular teaching right here in Leviticus 25 could be named. It could be named an eco-friendly. This is an eco-friendly chapter right here because it speaks on the law of the land. The law of the land. And the first matter, the matter that we're touching on right now, is the matter of the Sabbatic year, or the Sabbatical year, that there's a Sabbatical year. And so we can see obviously that we cannot fulfill this until we come into the land which he has given us. This is what's very interesting. We can't really fulfill it out here. I mean, we could practice in the sense, you understand, or we can see the real-time application, you understand, such as crop rotation or letting the land lie fallow. This is what they call letting the land lie fallow. In other words, for a year, farmers, good farmers and farmers that get good crops, they have learned to rotate their crops. You understand? So this portion of land, you understand, that they was like every several years, but in principle there's a 7 year cycle. There's a 7 year cycle that the land actually, if you begin to husband the land in that way, the land will respond to you. So ones have learned this science. It's a very big science of crop rotation and so on. But the point that we're trying to make here is that even thousands of years ago, our ancestors, this was the instruction and advice to the Israelites. This is what the Israelites were learning even when they were in their wilderness. So this particular portion here, Sabbath 32, which is called Terara or Behar or Har, actually Har would be its name. We didn't touch on exactly, get into the name, and perhaps we should get into the name of actually why is it called Terara? What is a Terara? How does Besina Terara link with Behar? What is Terara, the Terara Har connection right there? Because we want just to touch on this particular law of the land. So here several laws of the land are being laid laid out. In particular, there are five elements or five matters concerning the law of the land that we would like to touch on. So this is probably going to be a double portion, as the other one was a double portion, because next to Behar in the guide in the guide on page 6, it's actually a double portion, part of a double portion, and it also connects with the previous Sabbath 31, which also has yet to be posted. Hopefully, when we get into Numbers, we will get more. Once again, we will get back on the sense online, in the sense. You understand, with the appropriate week's Sabbath, but it doesn't mean it's inappropriate, as I had thought from a little bit earlier. Why I said what I said at the very beginning. I felt a certain way. You understand, seeking to do I and I best. You understand. Sometimes to whom more is given, more is required. And those of us who take that word to heart in spirit and in truth, sometimes are like King David was, overachievers. But if you don't set your goals high, like His Majesty said, to do all that you can do, you will not be able to do. You understand? Unless you set your goals to do more than you could do, you won't be able to do all you could do. Is basically a paraphrase of the wisdom of Kedus Abatachin. So we want to go through this particular Besina Terara Behar, go through it in a little bit more detail, but we're going to pause for the cause. You understand? We're going to pause for the cause right around here. You understand? And then take this up in another, like a part two of this particular teaching. So stay tuned for it. This will be the end of part 1 of Terara, and we're going to touch on the meaning of Terara and the link of Terara with Behar, as well as those five matters that are connected with the law of the land, because it's important for us to understand that, because it says, when ye be come into the land. You know, so we have not come into the land which He has given us, those of us who are still in the diaspora. So we are studying in the same orientation, in a sense, as the Israelites were passing through this wilderness experience. So we look at being in the Americas and the Caribbean among the Gentiles as actually being a wilderness experience. So we should be pointed and orientated towards our promised land, but we should be studying and growing in the Word. You understand? That applies to this new area, this new territory, because it's very important. Because when we get to the land which Yahweh, our Elohim, has given us, when we get there, individually or as a people, preferably as a people, or at least in family, you understand, units, you understand, or as groups, because in order to live on the land, see, this is the orientation. A lot of folks who claim to be don't have that mind. So when they think about living communally or living in a community, there is not a desire to live in a community for them. They want to go maybe to Africa, live in the big cities, and continue to do what they've done over here. Well, that's a whole different orientation towards the matter. You understand? We who are in the Al-Qidan, the B'nai Barit, must understand, well, what are the terms? This is agreement. A covenant is agreement. And Sinai is a very important place as well, because it was in Mount Sinai, we can say, that Yahweh, that he married his people. You understand? So it's in this consciousness, you understand, in these studies, that we are becoming married. We're learning, well, what are our vows, so to speak? You understand? What are the terms of the relationship? In a way, it's almost like a prenuptial, you can say, before we have not entered into the land. We have not become married to the land. So these are the prenuptials of the land. But there's a very important application that actually works in an ecological, agricultural, you know what I'm saying, and tends to prosperity, you understand, in the land. And it's only when the careless Ethiopians and other Africans who might have been Hebrews or related to Hebraic peoples in the past left off on this order and discipline, that we get famines. When you don't keep the sabbatical year, you understand, you over exploit, you understand, the land, and the land fails on you, and there's crop failure because you are undisciplined, out of order, and the land spits you out. This is what it said, the land shall spit them out. So there's many of these careless Ethiopians and others who have been spit out. You understand, who have been spit out. They would say, oh, blame Haile Selassie, the first crowd, and the Selassie phobia, Rastafari phobia, folks. Rastaphobia, Rastafari phobia, you can say, which is another subject matter we'll touch on. So anyway, stay tuned, brothers and sisters. More to come, Yah willing. Shalom. Salam.